Hello and welcome back. Today's video we're going to be talking about spiritual direction. It's a topic that's very important for the vocational discernment process. Very important to have a spiritual director, and we highly recommend it. It's not completely necessary. It's possible to do vocational discernment without a spiritual director, but again, it's highly recommended. The reason why this is so important is because the spiritual director can be like a bridge between the person and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is the true spiritual director. He's the one who inspires within our hearts, moves our hearts to go in the right direction through his movements and his inspirations. The spiritual director becomes a bridge between our weakness and our inability to interpret the signs that the Holy Spirit is giving to us and the Holy Spirit himself. So this is why this instrument can be so important. It's kind of like a friend that accompanies us along the journey, helping us to see the path as we go forward. So the spiritual director is important for many different reasons. One of the first reasons, maybe the most obvious reason, is that he gives us the opportunity to externalize what we're feeling, to get it out, to speak it. So if someone is experiencing fear, they might have not been able to understand what they're feeling, because they haven't externalized it. So once they start explaining, they can give it a name and say, oh, okay, well, I'm feeling fear in this situation. So they get a new perspective, their own perspective, and then they also get the perspective of the third person, the spiritual director himself, who, because he is learned, hopefully in the ways of the spiritual life, in the ways of vocational discernment, can give a more objective judgment upon what's going on in the person's heart and lead in the right direction. The spiritual director also encourages, especially in those moments of weakness, those moments when there's doubt or there's discouragement. They can happen very easily in the spiritual life, and especially in the vocational discernment process. It's easy to get discouraged, and so the spiritual director pushes, he challenges, he invites the person to take courageous new steps to accomplishing God's will. Also, because the spiritual director is learned, he has kind of a global perspective of the spiritual life, and so can apply the different principles of vocational discernment to different situations. Maybe I'll just give a quick example to make this more concrete. Two people can do the exact same thing, and for one person it's the right step, for the other person it's the wrong step. So let's say a person is just beginning vocational discernment and they decide to go out on a date. Well, a good spiritual director will understand that it's too early to go out on a date because the person is not free to be able to see God's will yet. And so to involve their heart in a romantic relationship can cloud this ability. Whereas a person who has already discerned they need to get married and just needs to find the right person, that's the right time to be asking people out on dates, to be trying to find the person that God has meant for you. So the same step, but in two different parts of the process, can be on one hand is bad, on one hand is good. The spiritual director, because he has the global perspective, understands what's right for you in this particular situation. Yeah.
Or we could say a good spiritual director, because there are, just like in any other profession or ministry, there can be people who are better at this and people who are worse. And so I want to give you, before we leave here, some criteria for choosing a good spiritual director and some things to watch out for. And they don't come from me. The 4 criteria I'm going to give you, they come from Teresa of Avila, Doctor of the Church, St. Teresa of Avila. So I think she knows what she's talking about. And she says, #1 criteria for a spiritual director, learning. They need to know their stuff. In the case of somebody who's doing vocational discernment, they need to know the vocational discernment journey. They need to know the steps that are being taken. They need to know the fundamentals of the spiritual life. They need to know about mental prayer. They need to know about Mass, confession, the fundamentals, Marian devotion. If they don't have that knowledge and the big picture of what the vocational discernment and spiritual journey look like, if they don't have that, then you're in trouble. The second thing is, the criteria she gives is prudence. And what she means by prudence is the ability to make good decisions, the ability to see what's the cost of this, what are the benefits, what are the negative consequences, what are the positive consequences. So that prudence to help you make a good judgment of, does it make sense for me to do this? Does it not make sense? Why does it make sense? Why does it make sense? That's the second key component of a good spiritual director. The third characteristic that you're looking for is what she sometimes calls experience, or other times calls wisdom, that knowledge that comes from experience, where, that been there, done that knowledge, where she said, look, here is somebody who's been through vocational discernment. Here is somebody who's helped 100 other people through vocational discernment. So when you get to that person, you know they know their stuff because they've been there, done that, and they're ready to go. Fourth criteria that she gives, and a lot of us would put it first, I know I was tempted to put it first, the spiritual director is an example of holiness for us. And we would think, oh yeah, I want my spiritual director to be holy, I want my spiritual director to be a saint, and be virtuous, and yeah, that is good and that is important. At the same time, it really does come forth. And Teresa, she just says very simply, the reason it comes forth is because the spiritual director's job is not to do the journey for you, the spiritual director's job is to guide you on your journey. So if they're holy, that's great, but holiness by itself does not make you a spiritual director. So to be on the lookout for people that are holy, yes, but to not make that our number one criteria. And then, just briefly, some dangers, things to watch out for. Number one danger to watch out for is, again, to maybe find somebody who is holy or any way that we think would make a good spiritual director, and find out that they're leading us astray, that they don't follow what the church teaches, or they're not totally in line on some things, or they just don't know. And in that case, the smart thing to do is to thank them, but to not rely on them, not consider them anymore your spiritual director. Maybe still continue to be friends with them, but not to have that commitment of spiritual direction with them. Second thing is, sometimes we get complacent. We can think, oh, my spiritual director is holy, so, spiritual director can't do it for you. So to not get complacent, not think, oh yeah, everything's going to be fine because my spiritual director isn't worried or whatever, but to keep growing every day in our virtue, to keep every day that connection with God and prayer, with the Holy Spirit, who's our real spiritual director. Third danger to watch out for is you find that perfect spiritual director and they agree, yeah, I'll be your spiritual director, but then you try to set that appointment with them, and all of a sudden all these walls go up and you can't get the appointment with father, if it's a priest, or whoever. That unavailability, when that hits, that's, at least in America, that's been seen to be one of the biggest difficulties, is you find a great priest, but you can't talk to him. And one solution that I found that works when we're talking about a priest spiritual director is sometimes you can ask them for a confession appointment, or ask them to be your regular confessor, and then bring up things in confession that you would normally bring up in spiritual direction. And that, a lot of times, priests will be open to that, even if they aren't open to real spiritual direction. They'll do that, and that can help you a lot in your journey of just kind of slipping in there as someone you're going to confession to, and then using that for spiritual direction.